Yes, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. We are back with our second Deadpool and Wolverine spoiler-filled reaction show here on Geekscape, and very excited to bring you another conversation about the movie that everyone's talking about. Literally everyone's talking. There's nothing worth talking about going on in the world right now, especially not in France. So this is what everyone wants to talk about. And to do that, we have assembled a great panel. Some would say the greatest panel. Continuing the conversation about Deadpool and Wolverine, we bring in our great friend, Mr. Eric Connor, Count Eric Connor. I'm sorry to strip you of your title unceremoniously.
I worked hard for that title. I appreciate
Yeah.
you recognizing it.
And making her debut on the Geekscape channel, Once Over with Cayley. Some would know her as Lucy Tightbox, but we know you as Cayley from Once Over with Cayley. Cayley, thank you for being here today.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This is great.
We're very excited to get your thoughts on the movie. But of course, you understand the pomp and circumstance. Doubly excited to welcome, also making his debut here on the Geekscape channel, Adam the H-Man, Hughes. Hughes, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, and I'm already inviting myself back on for the Twisters Roundtable.
You know, I haven't seen it yet, but when I do, I'll make sure that. But here's the catch: we're gonna play the game Twister while we talk about the film.
Nice.
All right, so everybody can find that. Because most people watching this show on Geekscape, they know the very nerdy background of both Eric and I. The fact that we're talking about this movie doesn't surprise them. But I wanted to start with our two guests, and Hughezy insisted that we be chivalrous for a change, and we let Cayley go first. Just talk a little bit about your background with Marvel, with these movies, the ones you've liked, maybe the ones you haven't liked, and where your excitement was heading into Deadpool and Wolverine.
So I was never a comic fan when I was a kid. That was something that I didn't get into until I was much older. In fact, until after I started reviewing movies. I had always kind of watched the Marvel movies, but I had never really read any comic books or gotten into anything like that. And so when I started doing movie reviews on Once Over with Cayley, I was asked to review some Marvel movies. And I was like, well, I can't review these without understanding Marvel. So I tried to give myself the biggest ever crash course. And in that, I discovered my love for Deadpool and specifically Wolverine, and in particular, Logan, which is probably my favorite of the MCU.
Yeah, a film that factors heavily into this one. And Hughezy, obviously, none of the films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe compare to Fast 6. But where are you at in terms of your fandom with these Marvel movies? Which ones have you enjoyed the most? And then we'll dive into talking about Deadpool and Wolverine.
I've been a massive Marvel fan since I was a kid. Every time I'm drunk in Dublin, I always walk past this tattoo parlor and I think I should get that Venom tattoo that I've always wanted. But I refuse to lift weights anymore, so it would look pretty bad. I would look like Topher Grace instead of Venom.
Right? Yeah, you don't want to look like Topher when you could be working towards Tom Hardy. But look, there's still time for you to, one, get in shape, two, get that tattoo in time for Venom: The Last Dance, which was one of the trailers that I saw.
Looks wonderful, but I have to say that with Marvel, I've seen everything they've done ever, but I'm also of the controversial opinion, to get ready. The Marvels was actually pretty good. And I think that people just shit on it because they had to, if you know what I mean. Because the critical drinker told me it was woke, so I hated it.
Yeah, that we talked, as you'd figure for this show, we talked a lot about the Marvels. I did enjoy it. I actually saw it twice at the theater, Hughezy, which, that is something to brag about only in certain circles. But it was the only MCU movie I've been comfortable bringing my kids to, partially because of the hour 45-minute runtime. But Go ahead, Hughezy.
I thought that was just because you were going to say because Brie Larson is so unattractive that you didn't have to worry about getting a thick banana in front of your children. That's what I thought you were going to, but I'm glad you didn't say that.
There were no thick bananas.
We all
in there
thought he
anywhere.
was going to say that.
Yeah.
I think like that's like a default
Actually,
setting.
Eric, you go ahead and put thick banana on your bingo card right now because we've already gotten to it and we're getting very close.
So early.
And
a
just-
movie
just
that
one
yeah.
more note about Brie Larson. People call her Captain Marvel, but really she's Miss Nobody from Fast X. So let's show her some respect. The greatest of the Fast series.
Yeah, the Fast X, it all led up to that, except that there'll be another one. I know what you're saying, Hughezy. So, as I was saying, I brought my kids to the Marvel because I felt like I could bring my kids to it. If there was ever a movie that I felt I could not bring my kids to, it would be Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, Eric, your kids are a little bit older than I am. So, did you see Deadpool and Wolverine with your boys? And for our audience and for our guests, if you did take them, explain just how old they are.
They're 5 and 3. No, 16. My 16-year-old and I went. Listen. At any point, as a parent, what's the right time to talk about pegging? And the answer is anytime. I mean, really, any week, any day, bar mitzvah, it all works out. I definitely, I had one or two jokes I had to explain to him, but he kind of caught on to most of what was going on. But my 13-year-old, I honestly would take him, but he's in this sort of phase of like nothing my wife or I suggest that we do is cool to him right now. So in some ways, even though all his friends saw Deadpool and Wolverine, he's going to be the sort of emo-y guy. He's like, nah, I don't need that. So, but I am taking him to Troll 2 this weekend over at Vidiot. So that's a major victory for me as a father.
Cayley, has Troll 2 ever been featured on Once Over with Cayley?
It hasn't.
And it probably should be, right?
It should be. I love that
definitely.
movie. And I love the Best Worst movie, the documentary about it too.
It's awesome.
Amazingly good.
Well, I'm sure that he'll be, kids go back to school in a little bit more than a week here in where Eric and I live. And I'm sure that he's going to be telling all of his friends about how he saw Troll 2 instead of that Deadpool Wolverine shit. Let's talk about the movie itself. Cayley, I'll start with you again. Just some overall thoughts before we dive into specifics.
I enjoyed this movie is going to be the first thing that I'll say. It was so gay. It was the gayest gay. I know it's like touted as a bromance, but it was just so gay. And I don't mean that as a compliment or an insult. It's just so
it's
gay.
A statement of fact and I think that I was surprised that the Disney Deadpool was the most gender bendery he's ever been. I think they hinted at it in the first two. One of my favorite things from the comics is how he always flirts with Spider-Man just to make him super uncomfortable. And we didn't get that in this movie, but there's still time.
So I'm kind of new to Marvel, but canonically he's pansexual, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. And Hughezy, you know what it means to be pansexual, right?
Yeah, getting a BJ in the kitchen.
I'm so glad you had that answer ready to go. That's why Erica insisted on being on with Hughezy and Cayley. So yes, he is a pansexual character.
Yeah. And instead of a bromance with the gay undertones, can we call it a homance? Or is that too far?
No, that might be too far. I'm gonna go check in the notes, and I'll post a community note after the fact. But back to your point, Cayley, I do understand what you're getting at, and it was something I had noticed about the film.
I loved it. I liked that. I thought that was really interesting. For me, it was a little bit of a challenge because anytime that we're talking multiverse, that for me the writing, as somebody who is a film fan more than a Marvel fan, it can be a little bit challenging for me to do multiverse stuff because I think it can get a little bit lazy. We can just kind of pull anybody from anywhere and we can kind of have them do whatever they want. And so I get a little bit challenged for that. I think that this movie was made for the fans and I think that it succeeded at that.
Hughezy, I know people want to hear about the incident you had when you went to go see the film opening day. So tell us about it and then your thoughts about actually watching the film.
Yeah, get ready to strap in for a fascinating story that you will run, tell your neighbors. So when I went to see Deadpool in the IMAX, got money, and they at the scene on the bus, which was the only non-dialogue scene. Then when Peter turned up, everybody started speaking like this. I thought most people thought it was a joke because everybody's wearing a mask. But then as we went on, we found out that the speakers at the front of the IMAX had literally blown up during the middle of the film. So they had to end the screening, and we didn't get to see the end of it. And I wouldn't leave because I was with, I take my mum to the cinema on Fridays. And so I ended up going to see Deadpool and Wolverine twice. They gave us a free ticket on the same day. And it was incredible because you get to sit there. And the first time you're just looking for all the cameos. The second time you can actually enjoy the story. And weirdly, I didn't have to explain any of the pagan jokes to my mum. So I can't look at my stepdad in the face anymore.
But so did you see it like 1 3/4 times that first day because you had to leave during the bus scene, or did you just watch it and try to listen carefully?
I watched it up until the part when Deadpool and Wolverine were trying to connect the cables, and then that's when the theater manager came in and actually just shut it down and said, "We're sorry, a woman has probably done it, and we need men here to fix the issue." And unfortunately, men were busy doing other important things.
So they were able to fix it, or you just so you started all over. You didn't see the ending the first time. There was no happy ending for you, Hughezy.
Oh, that's vulgar. And I ended up seeing it the second time in a regular cinema screen, but I still loved it. And I actually can't wait to buy it on physical media so that I can watch it all the time in my home cinema. Let's not talk about it again, Cayley. I have this 7-foot by 9-foot home cinema. Cayley, don't bring it up. I told you she was going to do this with surround sound. And it's just, there was so many moments in it. Like, I've come out of Deadpool being an NSYNC fan.
I mean, you buried the lead there. Stop the presses. I mean, and who couldn't be an NSYNC fan after that? So I'm interested in Eric's thoughts because we talk about Marvel most weeks and talk about sort of big reactions from you and also your son that you brought to it.
Well, I'm sad I never got. My mom passed away a few years ago, so I never got to take her to a movie like this where we could have talked about all these important things, the pansexuality of Deadpool and all the very specific details that even the Human Torch gave. I think would have been a lovely drive back home. But I'm glad you were able to. And I love, by the way, you saw almost like 95% of the movie, and then you got a ticket to see basically the whole thing again. So at least it broke at the end. It's funny, like calling this fan service. Like, if this is fan service, though, it's anything but safe. I mean, I think that's one thing that I think I was actually surprised. Like, I knew it was R-rated, but they leaned hard into the sexuality. Like, there were so many absolutely filthy jokes in this, and then the violence we saw in Logan. One thing I loved about Logan too, like Cayley, was like, if we ever wondered what an R-rated Wolverine movie would look like, within 5 minutes you have your answer. That first fight scene, it's like, oh, like, yeah, a blade in a head would look like that. So you're not left wondering at all, like, would they go far with this? They obviously were going to do that with this, and the violence is always a little cartoonish. But no, I was actually, I think story-wise, but I also didn't go there expecting story. I kind of went there for the rush, for the thrill of it all. And I love how, like, deep track a lot of the jokes were. I mean, like, if you didn't know about Gambit's, the troubles it had trying to get to this big screen, then that a lot of those jokes make no sense. But there was also so many jokes. That was something that was actually, I thought, kind of fun, was like, they never worried about did a joke land or not, because you're on to like 3 more by the time you even realize what they said. And like yourself, Andrew, that's why I want to go see it again, because I realized there's probably a ton of jokes I missed because I was too busy laughing at the last 5 things they did or said. So I don't think it's altered the MCU, but I think it was such a good time. I am trying to convince my 13-year-old to see this thing because I'm like, do you want to be the one guy in 8th grade who hasn't seen this? Like, come on, man. I want you to thrive in last year junior high.
Peer pressure is best when it starts in the home. So I'm glad that you're instilling him with some great values.
And shame.
I saw it again last night. It's only the second time I've seen it. Sorry, Hughezy. I had promised I'd see it 4 times by now, but only 2. And there's so much that happens in the beginning. I forgot and I jotted it down. One of my favorite jokes is like in the first 2 minutes when he talks about when Deadpool says "death by day player," and it's a very hip Hollywood crowd when you go to see something at the Burbank AMC on a Wednesday night at 9, but it went over really well. Talk a little bit about that, Cayley. You said you liked Logan, you liked the Deadpool character. They pretty much instantly were like, we want you to know that if you have fears about us Disney-fying Deadpool, we are not doing that.
Yeah. Well, something that I did really like that goes back to one of Eric's points, and tying into Gambit. I was really excited to see Gambit. That was I think that a lot of the people that they put on the screen, I think it is a little bit of fan service. I think it's like, okay, everybody clap now. Let's all clap. Let's get excited. I was clapping for Gambit. It was very exciting. But I like that the character of Deadpool was, again, unchanged. So he wasn't Disney-fied, but also he broke the 4th wall in the same way that he always does. None of the other characters, including Wolverine, broke the 4th wall, but we got these really weird ways of breaking the 4th wall with other characters. For example, with the character of Gambit, that's sort of breaking the 4th wall because we know that there was supposed to be that movie. So even though the character Gambit never actually talks to the camera, it's kind of still breaking the 4th wall. And I really liked that. I thought that was a really cool way to bring this character and this particular universe to life.
Well, I love the way that they handled Gambit. I was talking about this a little bit in an earlier conversation, as we like to say, but the idea that he's even like, yeah, maybe I was born in the void. And then also everybody's like, and we want to, be more heroic and save more lives, or get the chance to save lives for the first time, so it's all very on the nose. And I agree. The Gambit was a really nice surprise. And Hughezy, how did it feel to see Channing Tatum in a movie where he left his shirt on? Were you a little disappointed, or was it okay? Did it fit better for the character?
I wanted to see his shirt off.
Yeah.
But I would describe Deadpool and Wolverine as the cinematic equivalent of watching the WWF Royal Rumble, because it was really like every 2 minutes you had no idea who was going to turn up next, and then like you say, well, what, Hulk Hogan's in the fucking Royal Rumble? Are you kidding me? And that's when Blade turned up. Spoiler alert. There was 2 audible reactions, and you told me not to say one of those words. But the fact that it was
say the other word.
Yeah.
No.
Tax cheat. But the fact that Wesley Snipes was in that completely blew my mind. And I thought they were going to do more about the fact that Blade kind of started Marvel in a way. When you think about it, the cinema version, I thought it was fabulous, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, our fearless leader over here at Geekscape, Jonathan London, he texted me, and he wanted to know if I could guess which moment in the film was his holy shit moment. And I correctly guessed it. It was seeing Blade, wasn't it? Because it had been spoiled that Jennifer Garner had been seen on the set, but you can always brush that off as like, okay, maybe it's not true. But nobody had said anything about Wesley Snipes, and nobody said anything about Channing Tatum. So those reveals were tremendous. I thought it was great to really get those. What did you think sort of about our miscast, not miscast, but discarded Fox heroes, Eric, as someone who not that long ago, within the last year, did a standalone episode on Elektra with
Yes,
me.
indeed. It's funny. Elektra and Electro had a similar journey. Like Elektra, surprise, Christian and I were not fans of the Elektra film.
No.
And
I know that's outrageous to you, Hughes.
yeah, I know.
We
Hot
didn't
take.
enjoy the
Hot
Elektra
take.
film
Didn't like it.
from 2006 or whenever it was made.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, maybe one of the most boring films I'd seen too. And then Madam Web said, "Hold on, you ain't seen nothing yet." But I thought what was kind of great was like Jennifer Garner is an actor that I love her in 13 Going 30, like her a ton in her TV shows, but I've always been kind of cold on her as in films for the most part. But then when she showed up in this, I thought she was great in a way that she wasn't in Daredevil or Elektra. And some of this, I think it's kind of like these actors, when they age, they just get better. Hayden Christensen is an exhibit A through C of that. He's just gotten more interesting as he's gotten older. And so when she showed up here, I was like kind of thrilled to see her in this, even though I knew I would see her. And I thought, like Electro in Spider-Man No Way Home, I mean, Jamie Foxx is brilliant, and he was so terrible, I thought, in Amazing Spider-Man 2. He shows up in Spider-Man No Way Home, and all of a sudden, it's like, that's the Electro we needed. So it's a shame, because I did not expect this thing to be a love letter to Fox,
Right.
Which, to their credit, they mocked the hell out of it, but they brought back Human Torch, like, they did such a great job of sort of saying, like, yeah, there was a lot of really good stuff along with a lot of crap in the Fox Marvel adaptations. So I thought this was like a kind of a surprisingly sincere send-off to them. And I mean, I know it's probably a popular choice. Chris Evans saying "Flame On," that was my moment. I apologize, because I know that was most people's moment, but
no, it's a very fun reveal, and for all the people that knew he was there as Human Torch, I will admit that I'm the idiot that I did not feel that that's what we were getting. And I was more like thinking about nerdy timeline stuff. It's like, well, where's this Cap from? This isn't the old Cap, and all of that. I just wanted to point out a comment from our friend Ivan Soto in the chat. Elektra being fine with Daredevil dying was sort of breaking the fourth wall. I thought some of those inside like actor jokes was like, "Oh, I'm sorry about Daredevil." She's like, "Oh, it's okay."
Yeah.
And then talking about Hugh Jackman's divorce, that he's really let himself go since the divorce. And, look, it's very easy to put dialogue into Deadpool's mouth because he wears his mask in most of the movie. So you could kind of sneak that in later. Did you have a thought on that, Hughezy?
Yeah, but they also mentioned, well, if you go back and watch like a really good film like Blade 3, the Oscar-winning classic,
of course,
Ryan Reynolds' complete hairline has altered.
Yeah.
So the fact that in Deadpool they at least joked about the fact that Ryan Reynolds wears a wig, it was like, thank you, because I watched Welcome to Wrexham, and he would take off his baseball cap, and his hair would be completely standing up straight, and you go, what? It's like, oh, right, it's fake hair. He's bald. He takes steroids.
It's very easy to do in that way. And then obviously the sort of the nod between, yes, he's Deadpool, but Ryan Reynolds and Wesley Snipes having worked together before. Always bet on Blade. That's what I always say when we do these shows. And I just I thought that a lot of that inside stuff was fun. There's a lot of the Wolverine cameos that are for the comic book nerds like ourselves. Our visual audience sees that again. I have the crucified Logan from Uncanny X-Men 251, and there's some of that other stuff. And I wanted to ask you, Eric, what are some of those that really stood out for you? Some of those nods to like, everybody watching this movie's a nerd, but what about the super duper really nerdy
card-carrying nerds? Yeah, I mean, I love the various versions of Wolverine we got, including Patch. I know it's one of the better visuals for Marvel. Him in that white tux, looking like a James Bond character. And so I think this was. I mean, they're pretty smart about like kind of satisfying everyone. Like if you went in there not having read a single Wolverine comic book in your life, there's so much going on here that you wouldn't feel like you're being left out. I mean, there's definitely references like as your nerd runs deeper and fuller than mine does, Christian, and I say that with peace and love, of course. And so for me, there's things I definitely missed. As big a fan as I am, and yet I was still so impressed with like even like you guys brought up Blade, the idea that I love that cover. That Blade, you know, they had the joke about I'm the only Blade, and then Deadpool sort of did like a Norman Fell looking at the camera and smirking about that.
It was
kind of great.
It was practically Jack Benny who like would hold it on his face till like the commercial break. Because you know, and then the funny thing is that he could end up being the only Blade considering the problems
at
with
this rate.
Mahershala Ali version. But I did like how it was all knowing. And the last time that I talked about this movie, there were a lot of questions people had. It was like, well, how does he know about the Avengers? And how does he know about this? I'm like, no, you're missing the point. This Deadpool is omniscient. He breaks the fourth wall. He knows everything we know. He knows about the Avengers because he's seen the Avengers movies. He's never necessarily lived in a universe, but he knew how to find happy, So it's a fun tool to have, which honestly, it could go terribly. To do some of that stuff. But I found it to actually be a lot of fun. Were there some other thoughts you had along those lines, Eric?
I like seeing the sort of smaller supporting characters. My buddy here getting his due, even though that wasn't Vinnie Jones, right? That was like the non-union equivalent of Vinnie Jones. I think that they
he says you're this year's Juggernaut, which was
right.
A nice line. It was basically it was probably Vinnie Jones' stunt double who was happy to take the role.
And I wonder if Vinnie Jones saw what happened to his character and he's like, fuck that. I'm going to show up just to get killed by a girl. No, thank you. So, but it worked out great. And he looked cool, by the way. I thought, that costume in this, I thought worked out kind of nice as opposed to when he did show up in one of the other Deadpools. It wasn't I thought the visual of it wasn't so good. But I mean, there were so many small X-Men characters and actors that played, like there was the girl who had the the piercing like right here, like in her, I don't know where I would have a soul patch. She had that little piercing, and I don't even know her character name, but she shows up for like 5 seconds. So it was kind of cool that just to see lots of people from X-Men, because there was a lot of great X-Men along the way, villains and otherwise. So it's just nice seeing them get some work.
Yeah, and one of the moments that I think nerds get excited about is this notion of getting to see on screen, Wolverine and the Hulk, sort of this iconic Hulk 340. I doubted myself the last time we talked about this, that I didn't know the issue number. I should have known better. Cayley, I should always remember what a huge nerd I am. I should never doubt myself, should I?
Never.
But as somebody without the background in any of this stuff, I feel like I'm going to assume, Cayley, none of this took you out of the movie. The fact that you don't know this Wolverine and versus the Hulk cover, it doesn't matter because you're like, oh my God, there's the Hulk. That's pretty cool,
Yeah, exactly. I would completely agree with that. I will say that there were a couple of things that I think that if I was more well-versed in comic books that I would have appreciated more. So like even things like Juggernaut's helmet, maybe I can ask you guys this one. So the idea is Juggernaut's helmet was created because it can stop Charles Xavier from being able to do telekinesis,
correct.
Right? That's correct. So then that's
Charles Xavier is his stepbrother,
yes.
Which gets a little confusing with the family tree when you factor Cassandra Nova, who we'll talk about.
Yeah, but that makes it even more interesting that we get to see that used on Cassandra, right? Yeah. Because that means that her family tree. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting, but that took me a little while to get there. And I think that if I was not familiar with Juggernaut, I would be like, what the heck is happening in this scene? So it's just because I happened to know those things. Same thing. I struggled with other little references that I'm not sure if it's because I missed it or if it's because it isn't a thing that happened. Like there were all of these references to Thor crying over Deadpool. So that happens in the beginning of the movie. Deadpool brings it up later. He keeps asking, why is Thor crying over me? And I don't think that we ever get the answer to that.
No, we don't. And it's not referencing something that we've ever seen. So that is one of the huge looming questions is when are we going to see Thor crying over Deadpool? And how much money are you going to charge me? Because those are movie tickets they could charge $50 for. And I will ask Hughezy to pay for it for me, but I'll still go. You know?
So yeah, I wasn't sure if that was like was hyping me up for something in the future, or if they were just like, oh, well, it's a multiverse, so we don't have to answer this question because maybe that just happened in another universe. We don't know.
That's true.
I thought it was gonna be the end credit sequence. Like, I was like, oh my god, it's a perfect chance to pay it off.
Yeah, I did think that. What were you gonna say, Hughezy?
I thought that was more of a super insider reference to the fact that Marvel always have 3 versions of whatever film they're making. So like you always hear about how there's completely different like Captain America 3 has been reshot from scratch 3 times. Captain America 4 has been shot 3 times.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of a joke to say, at one point there was a whole completely other storyline with Thor and Deadpool, but that's been scrapped, even though the footage exists and we don't want to talk about it. Or maybe it's Avengers 5.
Yeah, I mean, considering where the sliding scale of the multiverse and all of those things, Hughezy, I feel like you're a film nerd, but you're probably not as much of a nerd as me. I feel like you were able to get out of the house more often as a young boy, and girls probably used to actually talk to you and make plans with you. But was there any of this stuff that you were excited about? We're talking about some of the comic book references. Was any of that stuff that connected with you, or you were just like, who cares? It's cool to see Wolverine about to fight the Hulk.
Oh no, I loved the fact that it referenced all these classic Wolverine stories. But can I give you one of my complaints? Because I had a few notes of complaints about the film.
Yes, I would. I always know to take the complaints of an Irishman.
When they did the montage of Deadpool looking for Wolverine, I didn't like the fact that it was Hugh Jackman. Like the first time we're seeing Wolverine in this, he was the midget version, and
yes,
I thought
the little person version. Yes,
yeah, I thought if they're gonna go to the effort of getting Henry Cavill in to reference that, I thought they should have got all the rumored actors, because at one point Robert De Niro was rumored to be a Wolverine, Dougray Scott, Keanu Reeves, the guy that played Elton John,
Bob Hoskins at one point.
Well, no, Bob Hoskins was Chris Claremont's choice originally in the late 80s. But you're talking about the guy from, what are those movies called? The Kingsman. I know the guy you're talking about.
Yeah.
Taron Egerton is that actor's name.
Yeah.
And Dougray Scott was actually cast as Logan.
Yeah.
And then there was like a conflict or paperwork.
Mission Impossible 2, actually.
That's what it was.
He couldn't do it.
Yeah. So then Hugh Jackman, I guess, was their second choice. So we call those happy accidents in show business, Hughezy. But I agree. The Henry Cavill moment, seeing it again last night, it is pretty great. People are calling him Cavalrine. And I thought Deadpool saying that we'll treat you so much better than those fuck sticks down the street, I thought was very nice. It's a great moment. And I thought that they did a good job with nods to comic books, nods to movies, but also nods to the real world. Deadpool saying he has an extra bone when he's watching Gossip Girl. Later, never seeing Blake Lively. And Blake Lively, of course, was Lady Deadpool. And the two Kid Pool and Baby Pool were also their kids. So I like when it's bring your family to work day on the set. And his daughter, who was really foul-mouthed as Kid Pool, she's not that old, but she's got a mouth that'd make her papa proud. So yeah.
Superheroes who make their family part of the film, we call that Judd Apatow pull.
Well, you know what? That's great cross promotion because there is an episode on Hughesy's channel. It's just the Hughezy Entertainment Network, and Cayley, myself, Little Lemmy, and Hughezy, we try to answer the question: is Judd Apatow a hack? Spoiler: he is. But we also did a video: is Quentin Tarantino a hack? Spoiler: he is not. Although I think Lemmy might think he is. But that's the kind of content you can find over there. Too. And if you like really lengthy, in-depth analysis, Hughezy also has a video about whether or not Jerry Seinfeld's a hack. Yeah. Mr. Hollywood, second best X-Men movie behind Logan. You know, I hadn't thought about it that way. I think Logan is tremendous. My favorite is probably still X2 because they had spent more money than on the first one. So I was the most excited for that one. Do you have a thought on that proclamation, Mr. Hughes?
I have an opinion on Logan that a lot of people don't like. I hate it.
Really?
Yeah, I understood the fact that they wanted to do that. Wolverine's getting old, so he starts feeling pain more. And it's like, well, okay, then don't have him getting into so many fight scenes where he just puts his head out there and people are hitting him. Like, I always thought that wouldn't it have been a crazy idea? This is just me thinking, like one of those Mad Men writers that likes to marry X-Men fans. But what if Wolverine was getting old and frail, so he had to develop some type of an armor to wear to protect himself in Logan, like a mask or something like that? I don't know.
A girdle?
Yeah, a bit of that too. But yeah, Logan, I didn't like the fact that it was filmed out in the desert because it was making me thirsty. I hated that whole sequence where they go to the farm family, not for that reason, Christian. I thought that was just stupid. And then what made it worse is I went to see that the week after my granddad died, and he looks exactly like Patrick Stewart. So I was like, thanks, Fox. and also, we all knew it wasn't going to be the final Wolverine. Like, nobody thought, Hugh Jackman's never coming back. So I just thought this is El Stupido, as they say in the streets.
I thought that he was done, and he had even said the only way that he wouldn't be done was if he could play Wolverine in the MCU. And I did not see the acquisition of Fox, so I didn't see a path to it. What are some of your thoughts as we're batting around some of this the inside movie lore? Now, Haley, have you seen all the X-Men movies? I know you said Logan's your favorite. Did you crash course? Did you even see X-Men Origins Wolverine?
I think that I have seen almost all of them.
Okay.
I have probably missed some, but they're like movies. I go see it in the theater and then I don't think about it a ton after that. And I will be fully honest about that.
The opposite of Fast and Furious films.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Those I am, I own them. I watch them in my home theater, which is actually 8 feet by 10 feet with double surround sound.
Quadrophenia. Look at
I'm sorry, Hughezy was asking. So what I will say that I have as a criticism, well, I have kind of a positive about Deadpool and Wolverine and then a kind of a criticism. I was so excited to see X-23. I was so excited to see Laura. That was amazing for me. I loved that tie-in. I think she's a great character for me, for somebody who isn't very well versed in Marvel. And I would really like to continue seeing more of her. So that was great. Something that I did not particularly like about this movie, about Deadpool and Wolverine, is that I think that a lot of the emotional scenes were just kind of like Logan knockoff scenes. And they weren't as impactful. And for me, while I was watching this, I can't go from the super duper humor into the super duper sorrow. So those scenes ended up feeling really dry. They ended up feeling really like cardboardy. And I didn't have that at all happen when I was watching Logan. So that was kind of a big surprise for me. I expected to feel a little bit more for the character Logan, but I think he gets swept up too much in Deadpool that it didn't happen.
I'm wondering if those felt like, in Wayne's World when it says like Oscar clip when he's like, and I never learned how to read. It's almost like, they promised Hugh that he would get some character depth.
Yeah.
So we have to
Yeah.
deliver. What were you going to say, Hughezy?
No, but I also didn't like the fact that, and this happens a lot with the Ryan Reynolds films or sequels, where like film one will have this big storyline, like of the love story, like in the Hitman's Bodyguard. It's like, oh, I just got to get back with my ex, who's also a rival bodyguard out there. But then, like in Deadpool 2, you brought in Domino and then you brought in Cable. So I thought, oh, well, obviously they'll turn up somehow in the third one and nothing. Which then means if you go back and watch Deadpool 2, it loses effect. Because it's like, well, what are they doing here? They don't turn up anywhere. Domino didn't even get mentioned. Racist, right?
Maybe a little bit. And also, he's got the picture of all the people that he loves. They very clearly forgot that he was such good friends with TJ Miller's character. Somehow, the real world kind of oozed in here. It's like, no, I don't know that guy. I don't know what you're talking about in any way, shape, or form. Eric, did you have things in terms of actual criticisms, critiques? Or is this the kind of movie that you don't want to get too bogged down in that stuff?
Well, I think on that end, like my criticisms, like are kind of macro, yet at the same time, in some ways, always forgiven. Like again, you kind of go in expecting a certain thing, and this was, I mean, I laughed a ton, so I was perfectly happy with seeing it. I would see it again in the theater if I can. But I, one issue I've had with Deadpool, and even though right off camera, I do have one of my great collectibles from Comic-Con a few years ago, the Chimichanga truck, which I think just went up in value now thanks to this film. So I'm pretty excited about that. But
the sense that you guys don't understand what it's like to live in a part of the country where the political divide is so evident, where it's so glaring. So I'm going to explain it with one story, and it just happened, and I can't believe it. I pulled up to a stop sign.
Well, that was unexpected. Christian, we can't hear you, or maybe I can't hear you.
I can't.
No one can hear me. That was a tech masterpiece moment. I was like, great. Eric's going to talk about something boring, so I'm going to load up something that I want to get to in a little bit. And I somehow managed.
You nailed it.
I managed to play the clip instead of just put it backstage. And I also turned off my camera, which no complaints in the chat. And turned off my mic. Also, no complaints.
Playing the role of Stuttering John is Christian Bladt. So thank you for that, Christian.
That's why they say pencils have erasers. So you were talking about you had a Deadpool collectible.
I have a fabulous Deadpool collectible. And make me an offer, y'all.
What is it? Did you hold it up? I did. I remember I wasn't paying attention to you, so I didn't see it.
This was the Deadpool El Guerrero Taqueria. So it's essence a whole bunch of Deadpools in taco shells. One of those I literally kept away from my children because I got this probably 10 years ago.
Oh yeah, Eric for Hughezy and Cayley in our audience. Eric buys a lot of toys that he makes sure that he has to keep away from his children. But
and dogs, they definitely
and the dogs,
a few of them. But I think like Deadpool's action is one that I find sometimes, even though it's fun, I love the R-ratedness of it, but I find sometimes like the majesty of it isn't there. And again, I know it's not trying to be as elegant as like X-Men 2 or Logan or Captain America Winter Soldier. It's not trying to be that, and that's fine. But I considering how much time they put towards those action scenes, I kind of wish they had a little bit more of like a comic book pop. Or just maybe a bit more, I don't know, an arc to them. Like I think good action scene. It's a set piece. It's like a short story, and so I found sometimes the action would be fine, but not necessarily pulling me in. Although it would always punctuate it with like a moment of like, oh, that's an eyeball I just saw. Like, so they're good like that, and the emotional parts that you brought up, Cayley, like. It's funny. For a while there, I was like, wow, like Logan's kind of one note in this thing. And then they gave him a couple of moments where you see like, yeah, he is a Tony winning actor for a reason. But it's kind of hard to play both sides of that coin. Mm-hmm. Like you're being like total goofs. You're bringing up the actors' real lives repeatedly. and then asking us to all of a sudden feel something. And I think you would say this, Hughezy, it's a little bit of warmed over Logan at times.
Yeah.
Maybe that was you, Cayley. Like, and I think that's right. It's diminishing returns, as good as both those actors are in the scene, and there's nothing bad about it. It just doesn't land as much as it could.
Right. Well, Mr. Hollywood in the chat says one of my criticisms of the movie felt like a rehash of Logan. Ivan
Well
Soto
said,
says,
son.
how is it a rehash when Logan didn't die? And the real question I get, the real point, I think, is that the journey can feel a little similar. I didn't necessarily feel that, but I think that that's what Mr. Hollywood is saying. What were you going to say, Hughezy?
I would have also liked if they made more jokes about the failures of Marvel recently. Like when they were in the void, I thought it would have been funny if She-Hulk turned up and she goes, "I'll come with you," and they go, "No, you stay here."
That would have been amazing, by the way.
Yeah. That would have been amazing. I did really like in the void, and I really liked the fight sequence in the void, kind of to counter Eric's point here. But I loved in the void having the 20th Century Fox logo and the CN Tower in there.
Oh yeah.
Like that was a great, and again, that like brings us back into the real world, but also it's that weird kind of breaking the fourth wall without actually looking at the camera to do it. I thought that the fight sequence in the void, that sequence there, I thought it was really interesting. But Eric, as you were just saying, it doesn't have that comic book feel. I enjoyed that fight sequence so much because it was a daytime, clear, really non-bothersome CGI, nice choreography, Hell's Bells is playing. Like, I enjoyed it as a good fight sequence. But you're right, it was not at all comic booky.
Speaking of AC/DC, I'm officially going to see them in 17 days.
I know you've been counting down for a while.
I'm actually going to see them in 16 days. So,
in
my one-upping Hughes.
Let me bring our mutual friend Trucker Andy to come on and tell you how much better Rage Against the Machine is than AC/DC, which was unexpected conversation that we had. I'm sorry, Mr. Hollywood, who I think I've met, says, I will say I don't think this has a great, like The Flash or No Way Home, which had a great story. I'll agree about one of those. This had a mess story, but great fan service, whereas the other two had both. I think that someone made the point earlier when we were talking about it earlier this week, that this is sort of the Fox No Way Home compared to that sort of being, that was for Sony. It was like, hey, let's remember all of that stuff. And yeah, when we were talking earlier, Eric, about it being a love letter to Fox, I wanted to mention again the montage at the end of all the behind the scenes stuff set to Time of Your Life by Green Day, who I might be seeing in 19 days, but we'll see. If
I'd
how
just
that
like
comes
to
together.
add to that, Green Day stinks.
But do they stink as much as the Miles Teller, Michael B. Jordan Fantastic Four?
That is what something that's very interesting, because when you think about it, the fact that Fox didn't make Fantastic Four 3 is what destroyed that whole Fox universe, because they then had to cancel the plans for the original crossover with X-Men and all that stuff. Then Daredevil was supposed to somehow get involved with that, but because they delayed plans, they lost the rights to it. So then it left Fox with only the X-Men, and the problem is with the sequels, everybody gets paid, especially when they're really good, like Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix. But I would like to have seen more of the Fantastic Four done there. Like, if kill everyone off, because if you're not going to make any more of them, let's see them die. And Chris Evans wears a wig as well.
Chris Evans wears a wig as well. That's late breaking news. A spy report, as our friend Bedabbler would say. I think that this movie works on a level that what the biggest difference is between Flash and No Way Home, especially Flash, because this movie actually made money, is that it only takes itself as serious as it needs to. And I think having at the center of it a character like Cassandra Nova, who Eric and I admittedly are only recently learning about because there was a storyline on X-Men 97 this season that all indications were it was leading towards her. And so we did a Geekscape book club about the Grant Morrison is for Extinction. So I'm just learning about this character, but I thought having a big bad who is actually big and actually bad was a choice. But I'm wondering, I want to ask you first, Hughezy, would you have liked, it didn't have to be Magneto, but would you have liked it to be a villain from the Fox universe? Could it have been their Doctor Doom, who was the guy from Nip Tuck? And I don't think I ever knew that actor's name.
It's Julian McMahon. Thank you very much. Who, by the way, it's just been revealed that back then he got the role over Robert Downey Jr.
Interesting.
So, really?
Can you imagine if they'd have cast Downey Jr. in the Fantastic Four? We never would have got Iron Man. We never would have got great spin-offs such as, that's right, I'm going to say it, that pile of shit Avengers Endgame. I hated it. That's true.
Is that that's a fact that you didn't like Avengers Endgame?
It should have been called Avengers Contractual Obligations.
Well, I think
Eric looks like he's going to cry right now.
I just there's a lot of hate in Hughesy's heart, and I didn't
well,
that.
That's why he drinks.
It's all because of fucking Chris Hemsworth, which it's like I'll only do Avengers 4 if I get to be funny. It's like, well, you weren't, so you need to sue them. Yeah, and it's like, well, what about if it's such a dark, tragic, sad film about what he's been through. Oh, look, he's doing a funny bit where he's playing the computer. It's like, this film is fucking shit.
I want to do a standalone special with Hughezy about we'll have to rewatch Endgame, and I want you to take notes about everything you hate, and we're just gonna let it run. We'll do it on a monetized channel. We'll try and hit the goal. We'll see if we can do it long enough where we can get to $350 as you go through each thing you hate about Avengers Endgame. And then I'll try to correct you as to why it's not a mistake. And then you'll just tell me I'm an idiot or possibly another choice word. So I'm doing some future planning right here, future programming for the channel.
But to also answer your question about the villain, I like that she was a woman and English. I've always said they're a problem. But was it ever explained how she got the Doctor Strange?
Yeah,
ring?
She said there was a magician who wandered through the void and she killed him and stole his trinket. And I am sure of that because I saw it last night. Don't be jealous. Again, I spent my night seeing it last night. So that's why she has it. So there's, we've seen many Doctor Stranges in Doctor Strange on What If and other places. So the fact that one ended up in a void makes perfect sense. And so she killed that one, but not Benedict Cumberbatch. I don't know. Maybe this was a Benedict Cumberbatch who used his real English accent instead of his awful American accent. But I don't think we're here to talk about that this week.
Yeah. I'd love to be put into the Marvel Universe just so that, not that I could be a superhero, but that I could ask Doctor Strange, where are you from? like, where in America are you actually from? Because you live in New York, but you've got this LA Saved by the Bell accent.
I live in New York because that is where I am a doctor, Hughezy.
I'm going to Subway sandwiches. It's like, oh, he must be from America.
Yeah, because around the rest of the world, everybody knows that tastes like cardboard. But here, I guess we can't get enough of it. So
anybody getting hungry, by the way?
Yeah, it's working. Yeah. This segment of the show is brought to you by Jersey Mike's. So make sure to order ahead for free delivery today. What did you think, Cayley, of Cassandra Nova as a villain? I thought most impressive was her visual resemblance to James McAvoy.
Yeah, of course. I liked Cassandra as a villain, and I have a little bit less of an attachment to having, call back to possibly, a different villain. So I really liked her. I think that it was interesting that she was bald, like Charles.
Yeah.
I think that was an interesting character choice. Is that how she is in the comics, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just noticed Eric was gone. I'm like, wait a minute, who stole him? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So she
So
is.
that's comic book.
Yeah. It's
This
a very
planet.
convoluted comic booky explanation that like she was like his twin, but
Yeah.
in the womb, like tried to kill him. Or it's a whole thing that the whole thing is probably not worth getting into. But yeah, so it is established that yeah, but the visually it was great. And just like I did last time, I want to give credit to the actress Emma Corrin, I think is her name, and she plays Princess Diana on The Crown, which I don't watch, so I had never seen her before, and now I would never be able to watch something where she has hair. So this is going to be her for the rest of my life.
I will say, I think that her character, I think she did a great job, and I loved her character. I had a hard time figuring out what powers she had. And again, I didn't know if that was because I just don't know enough about Marvel, or if that's because they didn't do a good enough job of explaining it. But I loved, like, probably one of my favorite visuals in this movie is when she is putting her hands into Mr. Paradox's face and then drags him by the head like this. That is like, I loved that. It was so beautiful. It was so well done. It was like the perfect bit of everything that I wanted.
Yeah, they took some liberties with her power set, and people, I believe our friend Nate Miller, who was on our earlier conversation, who's more familiar with the character, was disappointed with some of those liberties. I thought it was fun, and yeah, some of those visuals were very cool, and I liked how Pyro towards the end is like, no, just ask. You don't have to do that. I thought that. That was a little bit of fun.
It was like AI fingers basically, you know, and you know, and to your point, like that it's an effect that we haven't seen a million times. I think that was also what was cool. It was like an original way to show what she was doing to their minds. And then when she dragged the guy from Succession like a rag doll, that was hysterical and simple, but
we have a celebrity appearance in the live chat, so I need to call attention to the great Cardiff Electric, who wanted to alert, spoiler alert, despite the fact that of course it says on the screen Deadpool Talk all the spoilers, but Cardiff no doubt wants to promote potato soup on the Cardiff Electric YouTube channel, and of course DabbleCon 2, which is coming up in mere weeks in beautiful Rochester, New York.
WATPlive.com.
Thank you, and we appreciate Cardiff coming by. Go ahead, Hughezy.
I was also hoping that with it being the Fox universe that they would mention Kitty Pryde and her transformation since X3.
She
should have actually been Wolverine in one of the montages.
That it would have been Elliot Page as Wolverine. That would have been interesting. There have been those pockets of fandom who feel like there's no reason Elliot Page couldn't play Kitty Pryde, who would be someone who perhaps would identify in that way, and is one of my favorite comic book characters, period. So I have a lot of trouble thinking with that, more from my appreciation of the character. And Hughezy, I can't wait to hear what you're about to say.
Yeah, no, we need to go back and reshoot that where he goes to the woke universe and Elliot Page would be called Wolverine, and everybody else would be played by black women, regardless of whatever character it was.
I'm glad you talked about the woke universe, because I do want to talk about Nice Pool, and I needed to not talk about this in the previous conversation that we had here on Geekscape, and also on the Blackcast YouTube channel where people can find great content. That Nice Pool reminded me very much of someone who I only know about from the Who Are These Podcast universe. And I sort of spoiled it earlier with my technical problem, but Nice Pool reminds me of someone who's known as Woke Dad. What do you think about the comparison to Woke Dad, Cayley? For Nice Pool?
Yeah, I definitely see it. I would like Nice Pool's fate to be the same as Woke Dad's fate one day.
Well, that's a little harsh. And Hughezy, I assume you're at least in some way familiar with Woke Dad.
Yes, I'd like to see him in a reboot of a Bill Cosby project and become Ghost Dad.
The
Ivan
views
Soto
expressed
says,
here are the views of the individual commentators
yes.
and not those of Geekscape.
not those of the Geekscape Network. Thank you, Eric.
I'm-
Deadpool mentioned the woke crowd when Cassandra got out of the wheelchair. That was a great note, Ivan. Yeah, so I thought, I don't get it a lot of excuses to play clips on this show, specifically movie review shows. But if we're going to talk about Woke Dad, I wanted to take a moment to share with our audience here on Geekscape and, of course, throughout the universe, a gentleman named Daniel Alexander, who has a TikTok called The Shoe Fits. He has a mobile coffee shop somewhere in upstate New York. I think Cayley, our friend Carl, knows exactly where it is, but he has no interest in actually. It's not close. It's
I do not think that it's close to Rochester, but I do think that Carl is aware of the information.
Yeah,
Nothing is close to Rochester.
Oh, that's not even true a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. You know what? You're going to timeout. I'm gonna curse you with shitty Wi-Fi. Oh, too late. It doesn't matter. And here's the thing about Woke Dad, about Daniel Alexander, is that if you felt like a fraction of what he talked about was true and actually happened, you probably could just shrug it off. It's like, oh, it's another self-righteous, virtue signaling, any of those adjectives. But most everything he talks about just feels like absolute bullshit. And I want people who are familiar now with Nice Pool to get the chance to introduce themselves to Daniel Alexander. And so I wanted to share this.
The sense that you guys don't understand what it's like to live in a part of the country where the political divide is so evident, where it's so glaring. So I'm going to explain it with one story, and it just happened, and I can't believe it.
I also can't believe it. Now, yes, I've already heard it, but I can't believe the story that I'm about to hear, much in the way that Daniel can't believe it. It just happened, according to him.
I pulled up to a stop sign, and at the stop sign there was a gas station, and there was a truck parked pumping gas. The owner had gone in to prepay for his gas, and black truck, black rims, big pipes, and right out the back, one side was a Trump 2020 flag, and right out the other side was a U.S. flag. I look over, and there's a guy wearing one of those veteran hats who just jumped out of his car. It looked like he pulled into the parking lot to jump out of his car. He walked over, about face, and saluted the U.S. flag. After he saluted the U.S. flag, he walked over to the Trump flag, he threw it on the ground, and he stomped on it. And then he about face, walked to his car, and drove off. All while the owner of the truck stood there with his mouth open. Sometimes.
So I'm going to start with Eric, who has the least interaction with Woke Dad. What do you think the odds are that any aspect of that story actually happened?
I mean, I just, his voice is still doing something to my canals.
You have the fingers in your head.
That's it. Right. It's a whoa, 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 whoa.
Yes, he just Cassandra Nova'd our entire audience.
My God. And listen, I mean, political divide, et cetera, et cetera. Like, sure. I can't imagine either side of the aisle wanting to be around this human. I think like he, and then also to that idea of like, look at me and look how special I am for bringing up the story. Like gosh.
Ivan Soto just told us that he muted the entire thing.
You were smarter
than me.
And
I feel like you don't know Woke Dad at all,
Oh,
Ivan. There's no way you could, but I'm
and
sure
I realized
you did.
too, his AI that has become like, I guess, like one of the super chat functions.
The super tips, yes.
Super tips, right. I realize, like, I find that voice so aggravating. And then I'm realizing, and I've seen a few clips of him, like, wow, it really is dead on, because it's like every time I hear it, like, I could be in a great mood. I could be playing with my dogs. And all of a sudden I hear it. Now I'm mad. Like, I'm actually mad at you, Christian.
Well, it's very easy to create an artificial intelligence voice of someone who is doing an artificial voice when they post
an artificial
online.
Man.
Yeah. Did you have any thoughts, Cayley, about Nice Pool being similar to Woke Dad?
It didn't occur to me until you brought it up, but I definitely see it. Talk about a smile talker, and a people pleaser, and here's everything that is great in the world, and everything is this and this and this. It's very, very similar to Nice Pool.
Well, what's that, Hughezy? Oh, you want another clip of Daniel Alexander? Okay, well, I guess I'm going to play one more. I asked our friend Carl which one would be the best one to play, and he had me dig through the archives to find this one. So in this one, Daniel is responding to a comment, which is what you should always do. Respond to comments and do entire videos responding to them. There is no privilege to being a straight white man, and describing a characteristic of a person isn't racist. Keep it to yourself, Daniel. And Ivan Soto, you might want to hit mute again.
When I was just a little guy, I lived in what could only be considered the projects because we were poor. We were super poor. And as kids, the only place we had to play was the concrete jungle, the concrete in between the apartments. So that's what we did. We played a lot of handball and things that didn't cost us any money. Well, my closest friend in the world at that point in my life, my ride or die, was a young black kid. And one day we were out playing. Now it was the 80s, so I had a soda. It was a real treat. And it was in a glass bottle. And I dropped that bottle and it broke. Well, some older lady heard that bottle break and she thought that we were creating mischief out in the concrete jungle, so she called the police. Because that's what happened there. Young kids often were up to no good, but we were just two kids playing. The bottle broke was an accident. The police showed up, and who do you think got blamed for breaking that bottle? Even though I admitted that I dropped it, it was an accident. My mom said it was just an accident. His dad said it was just an accident. Who do you think got blamed?
The Jews.
For creating mischief in the concrete jungle of the projects. At a super young age, I knew that I had a level of privilege that my young black friend didn't have.
So I want to go to the person with the most objective opinion on that example of nice pool wannabe woke dad. Hughezy, what do you think about that story? Daniel dropping the glass Coke bottle in the 80s when it was still okay to drink Coke.
Well, I'm not going to accuse him of making a burner account so that he could reply to that message, but he clearly made a burner account so that he could reply to his own message. If you go on any social media app and you make a burner account, you'll get a name like Cayley 5,004,008, because that's the way you can discover burners. So he's fake. Also, I don't believe that a African American would hang around with him because those were homophobic times.
I don't think that anybody would hang out with him. And Raging Rhino, our great friend Raging Rhino, using a word that I've never heard him use before. I feel a headache coming on every time that twat starts talking. I don't remember if that's on the list of words we went over before we started, but it's in the chat, Jonathan. Yeah. I had to use it.
Every time I hear his voice on these socials, it just gives you the same vibe. If you've seen the press release where they go, new Disney Plus streaming service, Black Panther, the animated show. It's like no one's gonna watch.
Well, yeah. What do you think about the comparison, Eric? I know that you're familiar with AI woke dad, but I really wanted to share a couple examples. By the way, he puts out like 4 videos a day. There are hundreds of videos. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry for asking, but like, how many followers does he have?
Oh, way too many. You share your thoughts, and I'll look it up. I'll look it up and tell you how many he has.
I mean, the sincerity. He couldn't even get that high.
Home run, Hughezy.
68. I mean, the comparison is great. Like Cayley, I wouldn't have thought of it, but you're making a pretty solid argument. But his hair is nowhere near as silky.
No, I mean, Nice Pool is gorgeous.
And his Canadian accent, which, I loved how he kept leaning into that like he, as if this is Ryan Reynolds' natural speaking voice, which I think is hysterical. I want it to be. I don't think it is, but I want, in my mind's eye. And by the way, a reference he had when he said, "Get my country's name out of your mouth."
That was nice.
That might have been one of the best lines of the whole film.
That was a tremendous line. But
I liked that. I actually like Nice Pool. I don't wish woke dad the same horrific end as some of my colleagues here, but I would not be unhappy to see Human Torch's fate follow this gentleman at some point, not in a realistic way, but just if we could maybe cast him in something specifically to do to him what Cassandra did to Human Torch. I'm okay with that.
So 100, almost 151,000 followers.
Oh my
which
God.
Some of that is probably thanks to Carl and Blind Mike, and also I understand that Drew Lane in Detroit has really taken a liking to this guy.
But on one nice pull criticism, and it was the last of my negative notes, the fact that he was the only one that couldn't regenerate.
I thought that was a nice touch. Yeah.
No, but
You didn't like that?
I thought that's silly that the one guy that's actually being nice to him gets his head blown off.
Yeah.
When he's trying to.
I like that.
He's like, I don't think he's gonna make it. Yeah, and when his head explodes on Deadpool,
I love that.
So you do make a good point. Isn't this a Deadpool and Wolverine podcast? We've gotten back to it.
Yeah.
Look, every episode where we talk about Deadpool, I don't get a chance to talk about Woke Dad and Nice Pool. And believe me, I have 3 other videos I'm not going to play, okay? So, but finish your point, Hughezy.
Yeah, I know. I felt that Nice Pull was a wasted potential cameo. And it could have been Cyclops, or maybe it could have been Reed Richards.
Oh.
Or
Ted Lasso.
Or what about if there was like the Punisher had become peaceful while down in the void, and he didn't want to shoot, so he's finally getting ready to turn around to join the war with Deadpool and Wolverine, and immediately gets his head blown off.
Well, the collection of the Deadpool core, there's the Wild West one, who was voiced by Matthew McConaughey. We talked about some of the others. I thought it was definitely a fun sequence, only partially because just the amount of bloodshed. It almost felt like a Benny Hill sketch when they get on the bus just to kill more people, which I know that Hughezy knows Benny Hill because the English insist on making everyone watch it, whether they want to or not. It's like, oh, you have the BBC? Yeah, here's 6 hours of this. So
BBC gets lost in translation in America if you try to Google it.
It does mean something different. Yes. It reminds me of Passenger 57. What are some other thoughts from you, Cayley? Sort of the mayhem as we go along throughout our travels in this film.
Well, I will just say one additional thing about Nice Pool.
Yes, please.
I was a little disappointed with Nice Pool. I liked the character. I liked the blood. I liked the character arc of Nice Pool, but I am super into dudes with long hair, and he was not at all attractive to me whatsoever. And I feel like, as the token woman on this panel, that we need to talk at least a little bit about the sex appeal, especially since this movie is so homoerotic, and I want to come back to that.
Yeah, no, and we should in a moment, actually. Yeah, Hughesy's been private messaging, like, when are we going to get back to the gay stuff? And I'm saying, like, we're going to get to it.
It's coming. I feel like is what's going to happen.
That's what he said.
That was the picture he sent.
See?
Yes. So I was a little bit disappointed in Nice Pool for that, because like in my head, Deadpool with long hair or Ryan Reynolds with long hair,
yeah,
I'm like, oh yeah, that's hot. No, it didn't really do it for me. But I was surprised. I in a million years never in my life would have thought that I would have been into Wolverine. And I was. It was pretty great. There was good stuff.
The first time for you?
So you've never found him attractive before this one?
Never.
So the fact that he's older, can barely stand up,
I like it.
Terrible drunk, miserable to be around, hates himself more than he hates the world, but he hates the world a lot. Wants nothing to do with his daughter, who comes to confide in him. So I think we're learning a lot about what the Once Over with Cayley
I have high standards, is what you're trying to say.
Yes, incredibly high standards.
I've just worked out who Nice Pool could have been a cameo by instead. It could have been Ryan Reynolds' character from Blade 3.
I did like the Van Milder reference.
I love that.
And he says, oh, I get that. Look, I can do that too. What did he say? The proposal. And he's like, well, that's not what I do. So I like that it's able to be meta and that sort of way.
By
Yes,
the
go
way,
ahead.
I thought that joke went too far. The proposal's actually pretty funny, so make fun of something else. R.I.P.D. was fucking terrible.
Oh, I didn't even remember R.I.P.D. So, Cayley, you did kind of circle back to it. And yes, Deadpool being a pansexual character. And even early on, when the TVA shows up, he's like, pegging's new for Disney, but this isn't my first rodeo. Just make eye contact, all this stuff, all this very specific stuff. What were some of your other observations on, really embracing that side of the character that I'm going to say when I was first reading about him, when Deadpool was introduced in the pages of New Mutants and X-Force, there was none of this stuff. It evolved over time.
Yeah, I will say that I think pretty much every single fight sequence in this movie was just edging. And I think that Deadpool has said, like, edging is my favorite thing to do sexually. And I think that every single fight sequence, especially the sequence of him and Wolverine in the car, in the Honda Odyssey, I really think that was just, it was great. I think that, again, this felt less like a bromance for me and more like homoeroticism. I think that was a wonderful thing. It's not like they kiss in the movie, but I think that you can be extremely homoerotic and not have any kissing. So it's more about the cultural references, having things like bye, 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 like a prayer, all of these things that the lines like, oh my God, what is the one line? Get your special sock out, nerds.
Yeah.
Every single fight has so much penetration, so much, like, there is a lot of things happening there. But also,
just isolate the opening sequence with the bones and the claws and the shards of adamantium. Yes, penetration is not a word that I was thinking of when I was watching it, but clearly, Cayley, you had a different experience in your theater chair.
Yes, I sure did. Whenever I watch a horror movie, I'm always thinking about what phallic object is the final girl going to use to slay the killer.
Yeah.
And so we got that in the opening here. We literally get to see Wolverine's metal bones being used to impale the TVA. And I mean, it was so rad, but also we get butt slaps and we get close-up crotch shots, and none of that felt like it was trying to appeal to me. It felt like that was trying to appeal to men, and I thought that was a really interesting aspect of this film, in particular because it's the first Disney foray of this. You know.
What are your thoughts on Madonna, Hughezy?
I gotta be honest, up until the late 90s, I was a legitimate huge fan of her.
Sure.
I'm so old I can remember when she was attractive. But
wow, you are old.
Yeah, now she just looks like a fish wearing a chemotherapy wig. It's a shame to see what happened to her. She used to be called she was in a film it's called Body of Evidence. Now she's called Body of Embarrassment. She's a disgusting woman, and I hope she is in that car with a woke dad. When do you know what? Shoot them instead.
Oh, she's a national treasure.
I do have to say that they missed out, I thought, on going on doing an anal blood joke, because he's like, oh, I've been stabbed in the ass, and not in the fun way.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, no, that's true. Ivan's learning some new things. I've never heard that description before. In the chat in our earlier conversations this week, Ivan revealed that Deadpool and Wolverine was the first R-rated movie he saw, and I was very proud for him to take the plunge. And you don't want to miss out on this. And I agree that it's a great one for your first time, Deadpool and Wolverine. And I've made this point conversationally. I've made this point on shows. There was a point fairly recently. Actually, we were doing my regular podcast, the Bladt Cast. Cayley, I was on with Doug from Good Times, Great Movies.
I love.
And we were
Doug.
talking. I'm a big fan of Doug, but he doesn't like superhero movies, so never expect to see him on this show. But he did. We talked about RoboCop, and he couldn't believe I got to see it in the theater when I was 11. And I think for that time, that might have been a little controversial. But there's nothing in even the, what the version of RoboCop that would have been rated X had they put it out theatrically that compares to this movie, and it's all played for laughs. What do you think about sort of that? Like, are we so much more desensitized, Eric, than we were to, say in the age of RoboCop, perhaps because of movies like that were sort of a satire of the genre, the political climate, kind of everything?
Where we are desensitized is R-rated violence. Where we're totally not desensitized, though, is R-rated sex or even PG-13 sex.
That's fair.
Like you're talking about RoboCop, and one of my earliest R-rated movies I saw in the theater was Revenge of the Nerds, which, looking back, it is far more like that is a movie like I literally don't want my guys to watch that film, and I could quote 98% of that film still, and yet it is like its sexuality is so troubling. And how it's portrayed. And I think, I'm sorry, Christian, you were saying? Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, you'd have to have conversations with your young boys that you're probably not ready to have, including when there's the line, "We have Bush." You'd have to explain what Bush was, which, it doesn't exist anymore. That's one of those things from the 80s. It's like Ronald Reagan. Everybody's forgotten.
I would have to go to the library to look through the archives.
The Encyclopedia of Bush, yes.
Of Merkins, if nothing else. And I think, here, there's definitely like a homoerotic charge to this thing. And those early scenes, especially when the TVA shows up and he's just it's not just one joke, it's one joke after another. You could watch, you could be angry. That was amazing. And if anything, I almost wish there was a little more sexual tension between Wolverine and Deadpool. I feel like it is the butt slapping variety between them.
Sure.
Go ahead, Kate.
I have a question about this actually, because again, I'm new to this. So okay, multiverse, because Deadpool is the one that brought this version of Wolverine into this universe. Does that mean that we are seeing Wolverine through Deadpool's eyes? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense? Because if that's the case, then when the first time that we get that Wolverine with no shirt on, that is highly sexualized. Wolverine is hugging him from behind and there's all those boner jokes, like that. If that's how Deadpool sees Wolverine, that really impacts. I think that changes the entire story.
Well, it's a time and place, because I believe, again, I saw it last night. I believe he says, "Put your greasy tits away," which Hughezy was saying that left and right before we actually went live today.
I'm sorry.
It was directed
to me. It was to me. Yeah. And I did. I appreciate you warning me.
We said greasy, so that's how you knew who we were talking about. That's a fascinating idea that I had not considered, and I spent a lot of time thinking about this movie.
No, I like that pitch. It's like a subjective POV of the character, much less so than an actual character, which I think you could make that argument. I think one thing about the sexuality here is like the only real kind of moment of like romantic tensions, of course, hetero. It's him and Morena Baccarin, whose character name I apologize, I forgot. But I think
Skirt
sounds right. But I think the moments of like the playfulness is great, and I love that they weren't afraid to go there. I love that Disney was like, Kevin Feige were like, forget it, it's fine, let's put it in. And Deadpool is all about that. But I would have been curious, like, if there was a moment. I mean, he had a great chemistry with that dog, with the tongue.
Pool, yeah.
Dog is fabulous. But it would have been interesting if, like, there was an actual moment of, dare we say, like, romantic tension with another man.
I felt like the romantic tension was there the entire time.
Maybe
I wanted it to be.
Oh, I wanted it too, but I don't know if I felt it. Maybe,
Yeah.
I definitely think, like, I mean, the fact that Hugh Jackman still looks like that,
Wow.
and like his arms.
It was insane.
Yeah, good for him.
I'm going to put forth the theory that that is not Hugh Jackman in that scene. That they CGI'd his face on, and it was easier. He has the mask on. when he has the shirt
All
off.
right, I'll admit I did
And-
show up on set that day for that specific scene. I
Yeah,
wrote an NDA. I signed an NDA, but it's fine.
because they make the joke in the movie that he's wearing the costume because he let himself go after the divorce, so it's very funny. But probably that was one of the main reasons he said he didn't want to play Logan again, because of the kind of shape he needs to get into. And I'm sure someone is in that shape. And look, if for some reason they want to admit that really was Hugh Jackman, I'll certainly believe them. But I didn't so much think that the first time, because I was with my wife, so I had to act like I was averting my eyes from Hugh prancing around like that. But I went by myself this time, and I really was sort of taking it all in. Like, let's talk about the non-speaking extra. Oh, actually, no, he does have one line. The guy with the mug who says he's calling HR. Oh, does your wife work for HR?
Yeah.
I love that character, and that
Yeah,
just
great.
really feeds into what Cayley's saying. What do you think about this idea, Hughezy, that Cayley has shared? That is this Wolverine from the perspective of Deadpool, because he sort of brings him into the MCU.
It's potential, and I would actually be pretty okay with the gay thing, because we've had about 30 Marvel films, and they've all been the played out boring romance storyline. We even get to see a hot Asian getting banged in Eternals, which is always fun, right, Christian?
I mean, everything about the Eternals is fun. I don't even know what that means, Hughezy.
But yeah, Hugh Jackman did this great film called Bad Education. I don't know if you've seen it. It was about a principal who was stealing funds from a school to fund his private life, where he had a boyfriend or husband or whatever. So it's not like he's afraid to play gay, and let's be honest, it's probably because he is.
But I mean, certainly that is something that can be celebrated, and you don't have to have that theory just because of how much time he spends on the Broadway stage. But I think that if that's who he is, he should certainly embrace it. And of course, the character of Wolverine, I think it embraces that in so many ways. As we start to wind down this conversation about Deadpool and Wolverine, I want to go around and make sure that everybody gets to any points they wanted to make sure we get to. I know Cayley has a lot of notes, and I know Eric is ill prepared, so I'm going to go to him first.
Thank you so much, sir. I was one thing down for Christian. How many of these shows have you now done?
This is the second one.
Oh,
we're gonna do about 20 more. Yeah.
So I'll see you at the AMC 16 on Monday at 2 p.m.
Yep, I'll be there.
I think this was what Marvel needed right now. I think they needed, in essence, they needed a hit. I agree that I like the Marvels. I don't think the Marvels was a problem. One or two of those scenes maybe could have been thrown out, but I mean, I think all three of those actresses are great. I think there's been interesting things in this recent phase, but I think something like this, where it's firing on a lot of cylinders. Even our critiques, they're kind of small compared to what's working in this thing. What's working, it got people excited about Marvel again. We'll see where this leads. I know we talked in the last show about now bringing back Robert Downey, bringing back the Russos. Is that safe? Is that playing it too safe? Even if the Russos did show what they could do with the Avengers in a way that it's not every director knows how to do things on that scale. But I think, I don't know where Deadpool goes in the future here, because this is not really a reset at all. This was like a wonderful sort of like side mission, right? And we go there almost like a spec episode of a TV show, and I think they really pulled off what they needed to with this. I think it is going to give a sort of a jolt towards our interest in Marvel, and it got us excited for things like Fantastic Four. I'm curious, Captain America, because they keep reshooting it, but I think in the end of it all, like, this was a bit of a lark, and one that worked, and one that easily, and I think we take for granted, this could not work. I think that's something you brought up before, Christian. Like, if this thing isn't funny, it would have been painful. Like, if those jokes didn't land, it would have been the worst. It would have been watching a bunch of really beautiful, overpaid people thinking they're the greatest thing in the world. But the truth is, it has charm. It's filthy at times. It's graphic at other times, but it's weirdly charming. And I also think the fact that they were kind of in writing a little bit of a love letter to Fox, I think was the key. I think that was actually the thing that maybe made this really, in the end of it all, work, was that there was a respect for what had come before, and that put it in a shiny new box, and one that definitely they hadn't tried before. But I think in the end of it all, the stuff about these various Marvel properties from the Fox universe were given a nice little send off. And I think that montage at the end, which was unexpected, but I actually enjoyed it. And I think you sort of saw that they, Kevin Feige used to work on those Fox movies. So I think it is a smart way to sort of look back, say, all right, it was good. Now let's see what happens next.
Just imagine Kate Mara getting the check for that little snippet of her behind the scenes on Fantastic Four. And she'd be like, wait, what? I'm in this movie? Wait, I was in that movie? There were so many questions. Now, the idea about just the sheer volume, the sheer number of jokes in this movie, jokes piled on top of jokes, that doesn't always work. Case in point, latter Will Ferrell, Adam McKay movies.
Yeah,
if you put Adam McKay in the director's chair, this doesn't work even a little bit. So I think the Deadpool character needs to kind of be front and center, and I think that that goes very much a long way. What are your thoughts, sort of, on all of that kind of big picture encapsulation, Cayley?
I really loved, I think that one of the things that kind of goes a little bit against what Eric is saying, but I think, again, that kind of love letter to Fox is really cute. But one of my favorite lines in the movie was, and don't forget, Fox killed Wolverine and Disney brought him back. And I think that moments like that are really cute and sweet. And I think that the success of the jokes, again, I do think that this movie is reliant on the success of the jokes, because it can get a little bit convoluted at times. It is a little bit of a hard to follow story because there are so many things happening. I don't care about that because I enjoyed it and I had fun watching it, but I would definitely give this movie criticisms like that. And I think, just as my very, very final thing that I really want to say, because we haven't had a chance to bring it up yet, is that I love the line so much when Deadpool finally finds Wolverine and he goes, "Oh, do you have whiskey dick for your claws?" And I just think that that's hilarious. I like the idea that this movie brings up all of the things that we kind of think or we might joke about with our friends. Like, that feels like a joke that, like, you're sitting around with your friends and you're like, oh, that would be funny if it's hard to get your claws up, you know?
Well, this just really seems to add on to the psychological evaluation we've been doing on Cayley during the course of these 90 minutes, is that the Wolverine she was particularly attracted to, her favorite line is about how he had whiskey dick. And look, I think we're just, like I said, we're really learning a lot of things. And if there's anyone we can learn things from, it's our friend Hughezy. And Hughezy, my first question for you is, Will Ferrell a hack?
Yeah, he stinks. I hate Will Ferrell.
but about the movie.
Yeah, no, like, overall, I would give it a 5 out of 5. I think blockbusters-wise, this 2024 has been a pretty good year. If you haven't seen Twisters, I've seen it in the 4DX, so I would give it a 5 out of 5 with an asterisk. Because it may be shit, but the 4DX made it the full 5 marks. But as much as I love this Deadpool, I think that this needs to be the end of this type of film, of the crossovers and the multiverse and stuff, because you're never ever going to get that reaction of the Blade cameo.
Yeah,
like that was the most shocking one that there's ever been from any film. And
all right, but let me just say, what if Doctor Strange opens a portal in a movie and Dominic Toretto walks through it?
Oh my God! Do you think? Yeah, and a car drives through it, and he.
I'm sorry, I said walks through it, but yeah, obviously, yeah.
But that's what'll happen. Dominic will accidentally kill Captain Marvel, so they'll have to have Brie Larson from Fast X come into the Marvel universe, and he goes, "No, you've got 2 families." Oh, and Groot. Yeah, then Groot.
That's true.
Right.
Does an axe thing with his tree, and he goes, "See what I tell you."
All right, so I've come up with the crossover you'd want to see, but in general, Marvel characters and other Marvel characters and other superhero characters, you're not feeling any of that.
Yeah, I think that we've Deadpool 3 was as far as you could take it. But I also love the montage in the end credits because it reminded you of the early days of DVDs where nice directors like Bryan Singer and Brett Ratner, I wonder what they've been up to lately, would make films for young teenagers to go enjoy.
Yes, no, I do. And Ivan's right. Wizard of Oz did the multiverse right was a great point. I know we've gone a little long. There is a point that Ivan was making earlier, and I told him we'd get to, and I've been called many things, but I don't want to be a liar. So he's saying that the story wasn't bad. The way we got the story, though, the anchor being thing has never been a thing. It was out of nowhere. It was a MacGuffin in all of its forms. It didn't make sense. It was a true MacGuffin to the point I'm surprised Deadpool didn't make a joke of it. Well, he'd already called the Time Eater a MacGuffin. He's like, what in the holy MacGuffin is that? So he can't have double MacGuffins. I feel like it's just something that they hadn't dealt with. We haven't seen that much TVA before. I do understand your point. The example I always use is in Back to the Future 2 when all of a sudden you can't call Marty McFly chicken. Where's this in the first movie? No one calls him, so this is a major character point only because you're going to use it in the next movie. So yeah, that was a little bit expository, which I think Deadpool basically says about Peter Serafinowicz' character. I keep forgetting his name. The main guy from the TVA.
Peter Serafinowicz, by the way.
That's not him. Who is that actor? The guy who's the TVA guy. He has the Paradox. Thank you, me.
Yeah. Mr. Paradox.
So the final thing we'll make is how does everybody feel about this notion of the anchor being a thing? Eric, this isn't something we've had before, and he's so offended he popped out. Yeah. Cayley, did that something that speak to you in any way, or did you feel like it made sense, or did it seem a little gimmicky?
I assumed that I just didn't know something actually with that. This is the first time that I'm realizing that is not canon. I assumed that anchor being was a thing. So I guess that means that they did a good enough job of explaining it that I assumed I was the one who was wrong. So I guess credit to them for that. But I had no idea that was not a thing.
Did you feel like it would have been better, Hughezy, if a actual Twister had just come in and there was the threat of multiple Twisters coming to destroy the Fox universe?
Well, I think that Anchor Being would be a good name for an Asylum ripoff if they ever did their version of No More. I honestly didn't even think about it until now. That part of it is just like, nope, too much talking.
Yeah, we need more fighting. We need more shooting. We need more stabbing. Eric, I know that you look frozen. I wonder if you're frozen all the way around, which I guess now sounds like a double entendre. No. Are you able to share some thoughts about the notion of the anchor being? Is that something that jumped out at you?
I mean, it felt like an excuse to build a story around more than...
Well, we all know who the anchor being of this show is. Eric once did an episode of our show from Atlanta, and he had the worst internet of anyone I've ever connected with. So I believe that he's using his Atlanta internet for this episode.
I don't want to be praised, especially after what you guys threatened already. So this is relay through multiple cities.
Well, thanks for dropping by.
Well, that's a great War Games impression. Why don't you turn off your camera, Eric? We're going to deprive the ladies of those visuals, but if you turn off your camera, we'll probably be able to hear you. So, do you have how are you doing? Let's do a mic test right now at an hour 38 into the show, Eric.
I got whiskey cam here. I'm so sorry about that.
Perfect. Yeah, so we hear you perfectly.
Yeah, no, I think the being or whatever, it's just a little bit of a flimsy thing to build this around, but they needed something, and I guess whatever other ideas they had just didn't quite work. So worked enough. I felt nothing to it. It didn't make much sense because it's a contradiction to a lot of other things, but I also didn't think about it too much at all, to be honest. It was kind of like, all right, fine, let's move on.
Well, yeah, I wanted to make sure we got to it because it wasn't something we had talked about yet, Ivan. It didn't seem to bother us, but when we have future conversations with some of our other friends, I'll see if it spoke to any of them in a positive or negative way. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we did it. We're at an hour and 40 minutes. Believe it or not, we just hit the goal. Thank you so much to everyone who was able to help us. Thank you to Adam Hughezy Hughes. Let everybody know where they can find you, sir.
At the Hughezy on Twitter and Instagram, and Hughes Entertainment on YouTube. And if you happen to be a fan of, I mentioned the Royal Rumble, old school professional wrestling, last night on the Keep the 100 channel, me and Conan from WCW just did our first live stream. It took me 7 years to learn how to use fucking StreamYard, and I almost called him a you-know-what 3 separate times. So if it hasn't been flagged, go check it out. Which
WWE, WWF content is the quickest to get flagged. And yeah, you made me realize that every show I've ever done of yours, you use Zoom. But StreamYard lets you put great things on the screen that say Deadpool talk, all the spoilers. And we can also share the chat. Ivan Soto finds your accent to be cool, Hughes.
Oh, thank you.
You've got a fan, is what I'm saying.
Oh, and they could have got Colin Farrell back as fucking Bullseye.
Wow. There you go. I would have been fine with that. Were you just holding up Hillbilly Jim? Yeah, that's one of the only old school wrestlers that I know. Well, Cayley, as we said, we did hit the goal, but everybody should know Streamlabs, PayPal, Venmo, Super Chats, Rumble Rants, gifted memberships, and of course, as our friend Rocco would point out, we also accept Pepsi points and Marlboro Miles here on the show. But if people want more movie talk from you, Cayley, where can they go to find that?
Oh, they can always find me on Once Over with Cayley, which is Cayley on YouTube. And I talk about all different kinds of movies there. You can also find me on Patreon, Once Over with Cayley as well, where I do popsicle reviews, not sexy ones. Nothing inappropriate happens over there ever. And you can also see early content of those movie reviews. And you can also find me on Who Are These Podcasts? And I will also be at WATP Live, WATPlive.com on August 16th and 17th in sunny Rochester.
And speaking of sunny Rochester, for anybody in Western New York this weekend, if only there was an outdoor music show with go-go dancing that people could go to.
That's accurate as well this weekend. I'm glad that you remembered that because I didn't. I should probably put that on my calendar so I show
Carl
up.
makes me promote it on every show, regardless of whether or not there's any WATP content. Yeah.
Good. So August 4th, Sunday from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, I know, Rochester Beer Park, we will be having an Isotope show if you like instrumental surf rock. It's going to be super fun. I will be there go-go dancing and, apparently lusting over alcoholic men.
Which I think you're going to be in the perfect spot for it.
Yeah.
Hughezy, what do you prefer? Do you prefer the instrumental surf rock or surf rock with a singer attached to it?
It's got to be with the singer attached to it.
Well, then too bad you missed Isotopioke last summer, where I'll have to say I just crushed it. And also, by the way, Once Over with Cayley, the best episode that you did, of course, is the episode about train spotting because you had a tremendous guest that episode.
I did. It was you. It was amazing. And I'm trying to drag Hughezy on.
Oh.
I'll do Body Double by
okay.
Palma.
Awesome. Last time you
Body of Evidence. What about
I was just going to say, I thought you were about to say Body of Evidence, Hughezy.
Oh,
Double
God,
feature.
no. I couldn't watch it. I don't even think that... I'm afraid to watch that in HD. And to be fair, when you mentioned that before, Cayley, I was really hammered on that Friday night.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad that we've committed to it now. I'll send you a message in a little bit.
What about Guy Ritchie's remake of Swept Away, where he put his then wife Madonna into the film? I think we might all want to talk about that movie at some point.
I would love to do that with all of you.
That would be a two-parter. I mean, I don't think one episode would cover even half of it.
Hughezy, when we get past the 100-minute mark, I forget. Did I let you get your plugs in, or was that when you were taking a piss?
No, I took my plugs out for the piss.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I get mine in first.
Okay. Eric Connor, where can people continue the conversation with you? If Mr. Hollywood wants to message you, where can you be found?
Well, you can find me with my old school wrestling figures and my happy magic sock over at Count Eric Connor on X or on Instagram. And occasionally I'm showing up on Christian stuff as well. And as a fan of WATP and as a fan of WATB, it's lovely
Yeah.
sharing a screen with you guys. I've
Yeah.
been watching from the chat, so it's been great to interact with you.
What
in
Eric is
actual
saying,
form.
what Eric is saying is fuck, who are these socials? That was what my takeaway was there.
That's what
Uh,
I heard also.
And if
As
you
you
haven't
said,
had
back
enough
up
of
loud.
me in this episode, we did our first ever bonus episode of Who Are These Broadcasters yesterday, where I spent almost as much as this show, a little bit more than 90 minutes with the great Jackie the Joke Man Martling. And for fans of the universe where you might know me, Hughezy, and Cayley from, I did get him to talk about a former announcer of The Tonight Show. I didn't pressure him at all. I was prepared for him to not talk about it. But to see clips of myself on Dabblers Anonymous, oh, yeah, I've made it. But you can find that. And, of course, Who Are These Broadcasters is every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the Who Are These Podcast YouTube channel. And you can also subscribe as an audio podcast. Wait, you were going to give me a compliment? Go ahead, Cayley.
I was going to say your barometer for success is almost as bad as my barometer for taste in men. Jesus.
Oh,
I've made it to Dabblers Anonymous.
so you're telling me you've been in clips on Dabblers Anonymous, Lucy. Okay.
Not only that, Christian was defending his honor in Dabblers Anonymous. Like someone said something snide, and I was about to defend him, but nope.
I know, I
Blatt
already
cast
He
have.
was already there.
Yeah. No, yeah, they said something about the host is smug and forcing a smile, and I said the only people who ever force a smile are my co-hosts, right, gang? Right? And of course, you'll be able to find more Deadpool and Wolverine content here on Geekscape. I don't have our next show scheduled, but I have some old friends that some of you will recognize that want to jump in and talk about it. So we'll do that. And in a couple weeks, Eric and I will talk about season 2 of Hit Monkey on Hulu. So get to watching that. And that is all the time we have for now.
I didn't know Beyonce had a TV show.
Thank you to everyone for spending time with us. I don't even know what that means.
Alex, ignore that.
As the great Stan Lee would say, Excelsior!